Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of TalkiNindies, episode 4. Um, it's a it's nice that this has managed to keep some momentum, um, and we've consistently gotten some new questions every week. We'll see. We're out of questions, so if you want this to continue, you need to send in a question. But anyway, so this week a new entrant. This time we get some questions from a former associate, Max Lake, who I worked with over 2 decades ago, probably starting 3 decades ago, on sites like the 64 Source and then Planet GameCube, which is now Nintendo World Report. So, former associate Max, not gonna lie, we talk on a regular basis, but we'll just keep going. So he said in these as questions, he said, "So what do you think of all the rumors about GameCube remasters for Switch? Thoughts on that? Our heyday was covering that system, and I'd love to revisit some of those games." I would tend to agree. The GameCube was it was an interesting system for me, because partially because of the stuff that we'd been doing. The GameCube was sort of on the tail of stuff that we did because we'd worked a lot on Nintendo 64 sites. That started a site called Operation 2000 way back when, which was actually about the GameCube, well before it came out. And then life happened, and I ended up shutting down that, and then ended up working with Billy Berghammer on the on what became Planet GameCube, and is now Nintendo World Report. But the thing that was pretty wild was there's a whole story with that with Billy, like he was willing to who works now at Nintendo, by the way, but he took the extraordinary step of basically putting everything on his credit cards to get things going. He was determined to make it happen. So he flew to Japan. This is when Nintendo didn't release the systems simultaneously worldwide in all regions, but he flew to Japan and waited in line. Waited in line at a place. I think it was in Akihabara. He was the third person in line to get a Switch in Japan, which came out. I don't remember how long before United States. I think it was a fair amount of time. But yeah, I mean he was featured in the press, sort of being this crazy American that was in Japan waiting for days. It might have been more than days. It was a while. And so he managed to get a GameCube, before anybody in the United States would have had one. Came back home with it. He played some on it, and then actually he, because I was tied to the site, and I helped out on a bunch of stuff. I designed the back end to get it up and running. So he actually sent me the GameCube. He shipped it to me, so I played it for with the launch games. So Mario, what was the what were the launch games now? I know Wave Race Blue Storm was in there. Shoot, now my 2 to 3 decades old memories are letting me down, because Sunshine wasn't a launch game. Trying to remember. I know Wave Race Blue Storm was in it. Well, damn. Anyway, it shows getting old, folks. It happens. So I mean, it was a pretty wild system, and a wild ride that I went on, with that. The other one, Rogue Leader, might have been a launch game, though that might have not been for Japan. But anyway, so the GameCube was a pretty special system for me. I have a lot of memories playing games on it. It was before it came out. I was already married, but it was before the kids showed up. So I was still able to play games a lot more dedicated, in the more dedicated manner than once I had them. So yeah, I would love to see some of these games show up on Switch. As I said on the last episode, I don't know that I would. I still don't know if it would be enough to get me to shell out the money for the subscription for the enhanced version of Nintendo Online. But we'll see. If they had the right games, I suppose I would finally pitch in and pay for some nostalgia. I mean, I know I wouldn't play them that much, but yeah, I guess at some point nostalgia would hit. So the related question for Max: what are my top 5 GameCube titles I'd be geared up to see again, and why? For the most part, I'm trying to skip obvious ones, and some of them I've played. I mean, I would love to see Twilight Princess again, though I don't see that being part of Nintendo Online. I think they would re-release that outright, and I don't think I'd pay for it again. I had the remaster of Wind Waker on the Wii U, so I don't think I'd pay for that again, though I love that game. It was cool to play the remaster and go through it again. So trying not to be 100% predictable. I'll get one out of the way quickly because I'm going to do a list of 6. Because I'd say one's a very obvious one that's too obvious. So I always try to go a little bit off the beaten path. Metroid Prime. I would love to see the original Metroid Prime on the Switch. Be able to play that again. I remember having a lot of fun with it and being sort of amazed by how Nintendo had taken a franchise that we'd never experienced that way, and it really worked. That would be really cool. I would say that I've always felt that Nintendo, being first person with Metroid, I always thought that the most disappointing thing was that they really should have, and who knows, they could still do this. I doubt they will. I always thought that making it more like Alien, where there's a bit more suspense, you feel isolated, that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. I guess you got bits of that to some degree, depending on where you were and big boss fights and stuff. But just the threat of it would be interesting. Like maybe take something like they did the 2D Metroid Dread. Taking that kind of anxiety that you feel when you're getting chased, or when you're facing something that is beyond your ability. Having that in first person, I think, would be interesting and very different. So anyway, so I consider that a generic answer because everybody would like to see that. I don't know. Most of these are probably pretty generic, but I'm trying to avoid really obvious stuff. So the next one, in reverse order of my great interest, is F-Zero GX. F-Zero is just a wild ride of a franchise. I actually never really liked the original on the SNES. Even when I try to go back and see if I can appreciate it better now, it just doesn't. It just doesn't do it for me. But in 3D, it becomes a lot more compelling. Just the crazy layouts of the tracks and it's just that kind of thing has always had some appeal for me. I really liked on Nintendo 64. I liked the Extreme G. I like that. I like those twisting, winding tracks type of thing. I do wish F-Zero was more of a combat racer, because I like combat racers better. I like blowing stuff up, but yeah, that would be a really good game to revisit, and I would love to see Nintendo take a crack at making a more modern one. I always question whether or not the Mario Kart tracks that are F-Zero inspired, you could take the path of saying, well, they've made their F-Zero statement and that's it. But my optimistic mind is thinking, well, but maybe they're just testing the waters and A, making sure people are responding, but B, you know, trying to get some of that classic weird, crazy F-Zero groove going for a team of people to go running with that. But we'll see. The next one, again, this is a pretty obvious one. I don't think anybody wouldn't want to see it, but would be Eternal Darkness. Eternal Darkness was just such a weird mind. I'm trying to be polite. They mess with your mind. If they modernized it, or if they converted it, since we don't have memory cards and stuff like that, so you'd lose some of the extra sort of the meta horror where they made you think that your memory card was going bad or things like that. They'd have to find a way to make that recontextualized for the Switch and for more modern gamers in some way. And I don't know, you might not be able to. And maybe since people now see that move coming, because at the time, if you didn't read a bunch of spoilers, you experienced that firsthand. You could still get the controller, your controller starting to act funny and responding backwards or whatever, the more subtle things they did to you were. But yeah, the message and stuff about what's going on with your system, I remember that being something that really sort of went to the next level of messing with people. And it was just a very uncharacteristic Nintendo game. I'd love to see more in that vein. Nintendo pushing the boundaries of what a game from them, or at least published by them, can be. The next one, I definitely have a sweet spot for, and might not be. It probably is on most lists, but I'd consider it less of a guarantee on everybody's list only because it's not a Nintendo published game. Is Beautiful Joe. I played the hell out of that game because it was just so, sort of a beat 'em up. It's weird. He's got these crazy, rewind and just powers that made it a lot of fun. And it's just, I enjoyed the hell out of that game. So I'd love to see it again. It's just, they made Beautiful Joe 2. I think we've seen Beautiful Joe pop up once in a while since that era, but it's so disappointing that Capcom hasn't, kept that one alive, just because it was so unique. I had a lot of fun with it, and I would love to see it again. So count that on my list. The second to last one is actually, I have a follow-up kind of thing about it. Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader. When I went to one of the Nintendo press events before the launch of the GameCube in the United States, so that's why I'm thinking that was one of the ones that Billy sent along. But like I said, I don't remember if that was available for launch in Japan or not. But I was at a press event and you got to play some of the games in advance, and I remember playing Rogue Leader, sort of on a big screen. Like it was, they had you play it in sort of a bigger space that felt a little bit more exciting. So it was on a bigger screen than normal, but it was enclosed, so you could really get it sort of felt like a cockpit being inside it. Not because they decorated it in any way, but you were insulated from everything a bit, and so the sound was really loud and right there. And just to do the trench run, I just remember being just, picking my jaw up off the floor of what they were able to accomplish. And this was a launch game, so it was a pretty amazing to see. And I mean, obviously the music and the sound was just, it was very accurate. And I don't know if people now appreciate, this was really at the point where things were transitioning. I mean, you had the first generation 3D systems, so you had 3D games show up, and you had started having new experiences. So that was interesting. But there was no, when you look at Nintendo 64 games or PlayStation games, the original PS1 games, the polygons are impossible to miss. It's they have a very distinctive look, and they very much are far from reality. So then when you jump to the next generation, with things like the GameCube, granted, obviously we are able to, the games that we're used to seeing now are leaps and bounds beyond what they were able to accomplish in that generation. But it was a big enough leap that, at the time, nobody had really seen the way these things look. And so, it was a big deal. Seeing these things and the sound, since this was the first Nintendo system that wasn't, strapped down to the cartridges. So they were able to, they didn't go cheap on the sound or small on things like sound or things like that. So yeah, I think that was just a really cool experience, and that game was just a lot of fun, and sort of that opportunity that I hadn't had to that point of living Star Wars in a way that that I'd never been able to. So yeah, I'd love to play that. I mean, I'm sure now it wouldn't be as impressive, not just visually, but in terms of just the play. But yeah, at the time, I remember just being in awe of that title. Then the final, my number one, which if people have known me, they would know this. Wave Race Blue Storm is definitely the number one. I love Wave Race. I wish they would resurrect Wave Race. It's just the feeling of driving, or a racing game where you're fighting against the waves, is a very unique concept, and they executed it extremely well. For me, the waves never could be big enough. I want to be in a freaking tsunami. Bring on 15, 20 foot crashing waves to mess up me trying to stay on course, making it hard to see anything. Bring on the craziness, because to me that was where that game was the best. Where the more chop you had to deal with, the more it was distracting you from your race. I loved the challenge of that, and I loved how it felt, having to deal with the waves. That game was, the original and that one were just incredible. I also had I still hold out hope. I had when I was writing for Operation 2000, since this was it was really just it was a rumor site more than anything. In order for it to be more than just a rumor site, and because there was a slow drip of news, there were certainly rumors, but in order to fill in blanks, it was like a creative writing project, because we'd write, or it was mostly me, but we would write up developer profiles, sort of saying different players in the industry, what they brought to the table, and what we'd like to see them bring to the, at the time we didn't know the name of the system. But the other exercise was dream games. Nintendo World Report actually did a revisit on my version of Pokemon Snap, versus the newer one that they released. I still think my idea was better, to treat it more like a first-person shooter. Not that you were shooting, you're shooting pictures type of thing, but to to make it less of, obviously the experiences on rails and stuff like that. I saw it more as a freeform exploration kind of thing, and you'd have to. It would be like hunting, except you're not trying to kill it. So I thought that would be a lot more interesting. But anyway, so the Dream Game version of Wave Race, my main objective was I wanted them to go all in on making it as crazy and ridiculous as possible. So my best idea for that was, to digress a little bit again, one of the main things I enjoyed about 1080 snowboarding was, I think it was one of the last stages that you unlocked. That was less of a course and more of, there was a big mountain, and you had a great deal of latitude in how you chose to go down it. So you sort of explored and felt things out, and I liked that feeling. So what I came up with was, I wanted there to be a wave race stage where you were essentially driving, and this is completely unrealistic, obviously, but who cares? It's a game. Let me have fun. I wanted a race down a active erupting volcano, and you're racing on the lava. So you've got a big mountain area, a lot of jagged, craggy kind of stuff that you have to deal with. And obviously you're not going to dive under it, but, just, have a little eruptions and things like that going off, as gas escapes, just to make it as bonkers a kind of thing as possible. Maybe even have, falling rocks or things like that. But, I just wanted there to be a different kind of experience, and not so much make it something where you're racing on water, but racing on something that's at least semi-fluid. Take the concept further and do more creative things with it, just for giggles. Just to switch it up and give people a surprise. Make it a hidden level, that type of thing. I always thought that would be a lot of fun. But even if they don't give me my active volcano level, I would still love to see another wave race, certainly. I will add, before closing, one more sort of dark horse to the list. But this one, it would only work if they also would release the peripheral, on the Nintendo online store. The other one that I have a soft spot for is Donkey Konga. But if they didn't release a new version of the bongo drums, it wouldn't be the same. But Donkey Konga was a lot of fun. I played it with my kids and stuff too. And I don't know if they could get all the music tracks that they'd have to relicense some of that stuff, which I'm sure would be a nightmare. But they own so much of their own great music, that obviously that they could keep that part. And hey, it doesn't have to be. We don't have to play the music from the time. You could take out the stuff that was difficult to license, keep the stuff that was easy, and then throw in a couple more new ones, since it's just a rhythm game ultimately. But I remember I really liked playing to the Kirby theme, and the best was playing to the DK rap. Like that game was a horrible mess of collectathon nonsense that was just so irritating when you'd be going through and you see the different colored bananas and you're just like, I'm gonna have to go back with every freaking thing into the same damn level. It's just like that they Rare so miscalculated on that. But the DK rap just cracks me up. It's just the dumbest, like it's so painfully bad and yet so great at the same time, and so silly that yeah, and it was fun. It was fun to play with Donkey Konga, but 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 yeah, I would love to. I would love to reminisce on that. And I would, as much as I'm not inclined to get the subscription to play the stuff, if they put it out there, and if the Konga or the bongo drum peripheral was only like $30, yeah, I'd spend the money. It's throwaway of $30, but just cracking myself up, I would love to. I would love to revisit that. So so anyway, that's it for this episode. That's it for the questions. Like I said, we don't have any more questions in the queue right now. So if you'd like to have another episode, you're going to have to send a question in. Send those to Justin at nindiespotlight.com. And just as a tag for anybody who's still listening at this point, which is probably not very many people, so I'm not worried about it being a big deal. It'll be on the lookout, folks. Within the next month, it could be weeks. I don't know how long it's going to take to get set up on when I get hosting. I don't know how long it's going to take to sort of get everything set up on a server. But my goal is at the beginning of October, before things get more crazy for the holidays. The site is getting, calling an upgrade would be understating. It's a total overhaul. Finally, after 5 years. I mean, I'm a programmer, Cold Fusion programmer by trade, and that's actually Nintendo World Report is a Cold Fusion site that I wrote as a grad student that had only taken like one class on programming Cold Fusion with the database. That was like a creative project that just I was like, I'm gonna program a whole site. We'll do it. And the code shows how it was somebody learning to program in Cold Fusion. I feel sorry for whoever, after I had left Planet GameCube, I feel sorry for whoever was put in charge of keeping that code alive. Though I laughed because I was, when I started writing for Nindie Spotlight, I would periodically, check in and write something or collaborate with Nintendo World Report. So it was funny and terrifying to see that a lot of my back end code was still actively being used. Because, man, thankfully I wasn't asked to take a look at any of it, because I think I'd want to run screaming. Seeing some of that code. But anyway, so I finally decided that to sort of bite the bullet and take on hosting, because that's something I always hated. I didn't like that aspect of it. But I get some revenue from YouTube, so I can afford to pay for hosting. So it isn't costing me money. Or hopefully it won't. We'll find out. But it's a very different, because right now it's just the site is hosted on Blogger, and it is what it is. I did it to be free. I did it so it didn't cost me anything, and it was easy enough for me to post stuff on without putting in a great deal of effort. So it served its purpose, but I decided with the girls both starting college, and with having a bit more, I've a bit more time on my hands, decided that it's been 25 years since I set up a site. So, and I set it up for somebody else. So this time around, I'm setting up for me. So yeah, it'll be eye-opening, I think, for folks. It's a site that I've never made before, and it's as a thought of how different it is. As far as the front end for people are concerned, it's a site with no tables, which was a big departure for me, because tables are life. I mean, if you're listing, I'm going to be listing 3,000 or almost 3,000 games. We've got 2,780 some in the database. I'm trying to reconcile to figure out if I miscounted at some point, thinking that I was at 3,000, or whether or not we're missing a package of stuff that we've painfully tried to move over. But there aren't any tables. So when you scroll through, it's going to be an interesting grid. You'll see what it looks like, and it's going to be the main thing is that it's going to be responsive, so that whether you're looking at it on a big honking widescreen. Well, if you're looking on a widescreen monitor, it's not going to keep getting wider. I mean, there's a maximum width to the site, but as you scroll, as you move down your resolution down to a tablet or down to your phone, it is finally going to be an adaptive design, so it actually scales as you make it bigger or smaller, and sort of morphs. It has a dark mode, which I love. I don't like having bright white stuff glaring at me, but if you do, you have that as an option. You don't have to do dark mode, and you can even adjust the size of the inherent font, or you can make it a little bigger, a little smaller, type of thing. So super responsive, super geared up to properly support people who use their mobile phone, because I know that I don't know, it depends on the month, but at least probably half the people that visit the site visit on a mobile phone. So something that's more friendly to mobile was a good move, so that people find it more accessible. So I'm excited about that, but like I said, that's hopefully within this month. Could be a matter of just a few weeks. It just depends on once I actually plunk down the cost of getting hosting started, getting set up there. I've still got some tweaking to do once I actually am in a proper environment to get things up to code for what I want to do. But yeah, the exciting things are coming. So a little extra tidbit at the end for anybody who actually kept listening. But again, be sure to ask questions if you're inclined to hear more. And thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.